But now let's
Awesome.
on to the dessert.
Okay.
Buckle up, kids.
We'll start out. Yeah, we'll start off a little happier, and then we'll kind of do it.
We'll end on a bad note, like we
No,
should.
we're not going to end on a bad note, I don't think. But yeah, there's going to be some heated debate. So I'm going to talk about three things. But now that I see what they are, it's more that I would like to talk about how nostalgia and fanfic do not necessarily a good story make.
Okay.
So, okay, we'll start with Andor. So, Andor is the latest in the Star Wars kind of franchise that has come out, and when it was announced, so I'd seen Rogue One. Thought Rogue One was great. It was a breath of fresh air in the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. You know, I love Star Wars. I love the space opera of it, but seeing like the boots on the ground, the rebellion, the other, you know, what happens when, you know, everything else is going on was really interesting. But I didn't think that was enough, that we needed a whole series on one of the characters. And I was completely wrong. Like, absolutely wrong. Andor is like the breath of fresh air that Star Wars needs right now. And it's interesting, the more I read into it. So the guy that did Andor actually is not really a big Star Wars fan. Like, did not want to write
The actor or the writer?
The writer.
Okay.
Yeah, the writer, director, whoever, showrunner, whoever you want to call him. But at the same time, he did an excellent Star Wars story about the rebellion in the Empire. And it follows Andor. You see, it is. The thing is like at the beginning, it's really odd because it feels like Star Wars, but it doesn't at the same time. Mm-hmm. They don't use the usual Star Wars tropes. Like there aren't any like slide transitions, you know, with scene to scene. They don't use like sweeping melodic themes, you know, like with John Williams or anything, you know, as that like. They actually lean into a little bit of like the cyberpunk of Star Wars and the Empire, and so there's a lot of synth and synthwave kind of you know. I mean, it's very Blade Runner-esque at times. You can tell that he did the Bourne, you know, some of the Bourne series, because it definitely is kind of part of it is espionage and, you know, kind of getting through that.
Who did this?
But I can't remember his name. I'd have to look it up. But
Look it up.
Look it up. But yes, but we get we get a heist, you know,
Mm-hmm.
arc. We get, you know, the beginnings of the rebellion. We see Mon Mothma. Who would have thought that they could have written Mon Mothma and added, you know, and her whole deal with the Senate and trying to move money around and support the rebellion from behind the scenes and the things that she's having to go through. Luthien is probably the best part of that series, especially the exchange that he does when the one spy wants out.
Right.
So there's this whole like the dude comes up and there's the spy. He has a spy on the inside in the Empire, and he comes up to him and he's like, I'm out. I can't do it. And he's like, I wish that I could quote all of it, but he's like, you know, I am creating sunrises that I will never see. Essentially, you know, I am doing all of this because I know that I'm not going to see the fruits of it, but I'm setting it up. Yeah. And so, you know, you have no skin in the game compared to what I do. And I mean, it's just
He was trying to talk about sacrifice. Like,
Yeah,
I got a wife and kid now. I'm
sacrificing.
He's like, I'm sacrificing everything.
You have no clue, dude. You have no clue what we're setting up here and how much I set in.
Tony Gilroy?
Yeah.
Is the writer.
Okay.
So no. Now that, and I think what's interesting too is that it's reaching a larger audience because you don't like a lot of Star Wars stuff, and you like Andor.
Yeah, I was so excited to tell you that I was enjoying Andor.
Yes.
Because I don't like Star Wars at all.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen them all, and I've just been like, huh. It's somewhere from it's okay to I really don't like that. It's usually my feeling. Except for Rogue One, I enjoyed it the first time I saw it. And I was like, this is great. So, and I tried The Mandalorian and I couldn't get into it. I made a few episodes. I was like, I just don't care about any of these people.
Yeah.
Did you watch westerns as a kid?
I did. I loved westerns as a kid, but I did not like that story. I don't like the pacing.
You've seen it too many times.
I don't like the pacing of it. I just didn't care about the characters. It was just irritating. But we just were bored, and we said, let's try Andor. And the first episode, Chris was like, this is kind of boring. And I was like, yeah, it is kind of boring. I said, oh, let's try it. And by the third or fourth, we were both hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is so satisfying. It's
Yeah.
so delicious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for all those reasons that you said. And one of the favorite things that I liked about it was you have this one bad guy who is essentially a bad cop, and he just does awful things. And he has to go home and live with his mom at one point. And somehow she's worse. You have sympathy for him because she's so awful.
Mm-hmm. And he's part of like the fascist regime
Right.
that's taken over
He
the
is
galaxy.
the bad guy. And all of a sudden you're like sympathetic toward him because his mom is so awful. And you're like, this is so well written, directed, and acted.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it was a beautiful thing to watch because you have these great set changes between the empire that's so crisp and clean and antiseptic, maybe.
It's very like
Sterile.
2000. It's very 2001 like retrofuturism. I mean,
Yeah.
because that's when it was. I mean, it was in the 70s when it was originally came around.
And so
I
they
mean,
kept
that
that
was the whole thing.
And
yeah.
they kept that aesthetic, which unlike when you see a Star Trek show and they do it, they update it in ways that I enjoy. This one doesn't do that. It keeps this really kind of old style, and so it's really clean in places. And then when you go to like a planet, it can be like just really dusty and dirty and grungy and cyberpunk is a great way to describe a lot of it. So it's these really beautiful contrasts in sets.
Mm-hmm.
And costuming. Some of the costuming is so rich. You mentioned the politician,
Mm-hmm.
seeing those political movements, seeing the relationship between her and her husband and her daughter and her sister, and how all that's unfolding in the bigger story.
Mm-hmm.
It's a show that I'm excited for season 2.
Yeah.